Howdy, y'all. So it's been several weeks since I've done an update on the Ppg-Guard. Let's just say that it's a lot of work to make one of these. Okay. I'm going to run you through some of the iterations of how much of a difficult task this is. So we have our barrel. And then every iteration of a magazine that I could think of, starting with plastic. Plastic was a no-go because I just couldn't get it right. It wouldn't sit in there right, it wouldn't do what I wanted to right, so I forgot it. I said, alright, this is not going to work. Then I tried to cut pieces of aluminum. Kept on running into issues. Like, I can't seem to get a straight cut because I got a crappy vise. Well, then I said, alright, well, I'm going to try it anyways because I could get at least one cut that was almost good enough, and it would give me something to base myself off of. So I tried drilling. As you can see, it didn't work out the way I wanted it to. I got 3 to go through where I wanted them, and then 1 started moving. So then I tried drilling another one. I drilled that center hole first, so you can see where my mistake came. Center hole got drilled first, and I didn't think about it until I was drilling this hole. And the drill started to skitter off to the side, giving me an indirect taper going to one direction. This diverted, causing this to not be a viable magazine anymore. So finally, I cut another piece of stock. I worked really hard on getting the different edges as flat and as level as I could, and as perpendicular as I could. Mind you, I don't have a lathe, and I don't have a milling machine. So that was a difficult proposition all on its own. I have a drill press. I purchased a drill press between this one and this one because I recognized that I couldn't drill a straight hole and stay on target. So I said, alright, I need to get a drill press because I need to drill straight. Then I realized that my method also needed to change. And so I came up with this. 4 rounds instead of 5. Now, 4 rounds takes away from the overall ability of having 5-shot count by 1 round. But what it also gives you is enough to work with. Okay? And that's what I needed. And that's what I didn't realize, was that I was working with too little of stock width for 5 rounds to be able to sit right. See? So I had to figure out, okay, is there another method that I could use, or maybe change things around just a little bit so that it would work. And I came up with the cross pattern, 4 rounds. Now, yes, this is way too thick to be a magazine yet. That, mind you, this is not a complete magazine. It's not going to be a complete magazine until I have the right tools to work on it. And I'm making that effort now. I need to get a lathe. It's a reality, because I need to have square faces in order for this to meet up with this. See? It needs to actually meet up instead of rocking back and forth. It needs to just be so flat that I can't move it. Unfortunately, I can. So this is not entirely done yet, and it's a good thing that I left lots and lots of material there. Now let's take a look at a regular magazine, okay, just for reference. That's for the 17 caliber. And see how much width I've got there, how much thickness I've got to play with. And that's because I wanted to have enough room to be able to do this. And this little rasp piece here on this. But I wanted to be able to do it in a 4 configuration and be able to have that drill hole through the middle, just like this one. Okay? So, it's a lot of work, but it can be done. And it can be done with, basic shop tools that you can get from Harbor Freight for fairly cheap. Okay? And that's why I'm doing this, because I figure, the average Joe is going to have maybe, at best, a Harbor Freight budget. And at worst, is going to have to go and outsource his work to a gunsmith. So I figured, you know what? Let's make this so that the average Joe can actually do this. Because I don't know of many felons who are billionaires. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure there aren't. Out and out, there aren't. So, that's why I'm thinking, let's make this an easier option. Now you can see my different stuff. Okay. This is the 17 caliber. It's still in 17 configuration, but I've worked on making it so that I can modify it now. And this is all glued together. Don't know what they were thinking at the factory, but you need to be able to take your gun apart in order to clean it and, work on it and do things like that. So gluing it together, I don't understand. But now we have our barrel, which, as you can see, is much longer than the other barrel. And there's a reason behind this. And that is because I'm shooting a much heavier piece of lead. I need to have more time in order to accelerate it. Which means that I'm going to have a longer barrel. As you can see, this is going to be that much longer. Okay? For reference, this is right next to my chin. Okay? So you can see it's going to be a much longer barrel. And so I have some fabrication to do in order to hide the end of the barrel here, per se, so that it looks more to form. Just a little bit of fabrication. But this is what's been the real conundrum, because trying to drill aluminum, believe it or don't, is really fucking difficult. Steel? Pfft, I'll drill steel by hand and get a hole like that. Aluminum? It's hard to drill aluminum precise, even with a drill press. And this is coming from somebody who knows their shit and was apprenticed to a master machinist, okay? I want you to understand that. I was an apprentice to a master machinist. That master machinist was my dad. So, I do know what I'm doing. Now, for this, I'm going to probably be brazing a rod into it somewheres, and then a couple of stop dog ears on the side, so that we emulate these right here. I'm not trying to make 2 little dog tags and then 1 tag here. It just doesn't work. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to take and make that little, okay, let's see if I can get it to Focus, you fuck. Stop focusing on my face. Focus on that. Okay, you see how that works? Those two little dog tags right about there and about that much down, because it needs to actually sit. And it's not going to be down, it's going to be up and inside, but you get my point. It needs to have those two little dog tags there, dog ears, or whatever, the little pins holding it there. And then in order to hold the magazine, I have to have a pin that comes out the end of the barrel, like so. Okay? So I figure, use my drill press, drill some holes, and then, not holes, but divots, file, braze, the like. Okay? Now this is a lot of work, and the process is going to be patented, which is why I haven't made a whole bunch of videos on that particular. Suffice to say that it is a difficult proposition at best, because if you look at the internals here, it won't let me do the little pawl and whatnot mechanism, but down in here on this side, okay, down inside of here, if you can see that little lever there has a lever behind it that shoots out this way, and that catches in these little catches here and holds this on the bottom so that your round on top, say like this, it holds you so that your round on top is in line. So it's a difficult proposition, to say the least, to try and get everything absolutely accurate for that, because remember, these walls are really thin, so I need to be very careful about my placement, whereas with a 17 caliber you don't have to be careful about your placement because of the fact that it's a relatively small round. You can still keep a lot of wall there. The flip side of it, it's a large round, so in order to put that little tag there, so that that when you have one here, if I can get this to focus, you framing, you fuck. Oh. But you see here, this is where that little tag would have to be, right about there, in order to have that direct in line. So it's still a lot out, there's still a lot out to work. So I have to do some serious work on that. However, I've already started training for a 4-shot count. As far as the Ppg-Guard is concerned, you only get 4 shots because, well, imagine for a second, it's a 25 caliber. In every engagement that the ATF, CDC has done numbers on, they have done a statistical analysis of how far and how long and how many rounds and this and that to try and break down any exchange which would happen in the efforts of a civilian defense arm. Now, they say that most civilian defense situations are an exchange of at the least 3 rounds, or no, at the least 1 round, and at the most 5 rounds. So I tried to find a happy medium there. I thought, well, 5 rounds is great. It's a great idea. Have your maximum, minimum, what have you, appropriate. Now, when you're in that fight or flight situation, it's, normal thought process to mag dump. I'm trying to make it so that you don't need to. You don't need to think about a mag dump. You don't need 8 rounds. You don't need 10 rounds. You don't need 20 rounds. You don't even need 4. You'll need 1. And that's one of the great points of having an air gun. Very, very little recoil. As a matter of fact, it's so slight, you can get 1 round off, 2 rounds off, 3 rounds off, and have all 3 of them in the same pathway. Same low density air zone, because they're following each other in each other's wake. That's possible through 2 things, automatic air guns and semi-automatic air guns if you shoot fast enough. And with a pistol, you're thinking, okay, well, each pull of the trigger, I'm trying to release a round. And I'm only trying to do that between, 75 and 10 feet. Because between that area is where an engagement is going to happen. But think of it this way, what happens when it's closer? What happens when you only have those 4 rounds and it's a longer distance? Well, you need to have a rifle, right? You need to have close quarters combat skills. So, this is a tool. This isn't a be-all and end-all. This is just a tool. And a tool is only as good as the operator. At the same, what happens if you're an operator that doesn't have the tool? You can't do the job, right? You can try, but likelihood is you're going to do a shitty job. And that's why I'm trying to make this so that it's big enough. That's the whole point. I want you slinging something like this. Not like that. Okay? There's a big difference. One's tiny. One will probably bounce off of mere clothing. The other most likely will go right through. And I know what you're saying. Well, why don't you just purchase a 9mm or something, or a bigger gun, a firearm? Well, a lot of people can't purchase firearms. In fact, I'm one of those people. Even though I'm a U.S. Minuteman, constantly serving, even though I'm not just sworn to protect, but not only sworn to protect and defend, but also sworn to uphold the Constitution and uphold those laws. Because of ATF confuckery, we'll call it, I have not been allowed legally to purchase a shotgun for hunting purposes in any state in the Union, because I don't know why. I literally can't tell you why. I can't think of a reason. Alright, now let's wind back here. When I was a young man, there were a lot of people who did not want to see me get a firearm. So they called in several danger to self and other, Baker's Act calls on me. And because there is no method for a Baker Act to be rescinded, nor is there any method for a Baker Act to be refuted on the spot, which is kind of fucked up. Let me be very clear. I've done everything I could to try and do that, to try and negate that. It's not possible. So, since I have those on my record, I can never purchase a firearm. Mind you, that doesn't mean that I'm any less of a human being. That doesn't mean that I'm any less intelligent or less capable. In fact, it doesn't mean that I'm any less in need of protecting myself. It just means that at one point in time, somebody didn't like what I had to say. And so they decided that I needed to go to a loony bin or jail. And that's all it took. The state of California, and because 5250 goes federal, which a 5250 is a secondary call on a Baker Act. Okay, you've been accused and convicted of a 5150, and then a second time around it has happened. Now, accused and convicted does not mean guilty, because, let's be clear, our system, especially in the state of California, has been flawed for many, 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 many years through both political bias and efforts of individuals who may or may not have nefarious intention. I've been threatened within an inch of my life. I've actually been beaten almost half to death and then stabbed to near death. So, for me to ask for a firearm should not be an issue. For me to purchase a simple firearm, just a simple one, just a 22 long rifle I could carry on my hip, legally speaking, is impossible. To try and purchase a shotgun, I have to purchase an air-powered shotgun, not even a real firearm. That's the level that California has reduced me to. I want to point it out to you guys. There are some people out there that are only interested in causing the absolute death and detriment of our nation. And this has become apparent to many people at this point in time. It used to be that I was just called crazy. No, you're full of shit. You're crazy, man, because obviously you've been saying shit that couldn't be possibly real or something like that, because otherwise they wouldn't accuse you of it, right? Or could it possibly be that I'm telling the absolute truth? I'm so fucking scary with a real firearm because I pride myself on accuracy, that people are afraid to allow me to utilize a firearm. And that because of something that happened when I was younger, and I mean this in the tweaked sense of reality of happened to me when I was younger, not me creating the situation, but it was created around me. Let me put it this way. My dad was threatened in front of me, and I threatened the guy. And then I rode away so that on a bicycle, so that I would not be the one who caused a problem, because my dad told me to leave, and I did. And, I could not stand the moral conundrum which tore at my soul to leave my dad alone with these people who had threatened his life, even though I knew I had to, because otherwise I was going to act out on my anger. And it literally tore my soul apart. Literally. To a point where I think that is my actual trauma. Not not seeing people killed in front of me, not seeing the horrible acts of criminals and the criminally insane. Not the watching as police officers told me that I didn't know what the fuck I was talking about, even though I'm 10 times as intelligent as most of those police officers. And I say most because I've met a couple that were really fucking smart. It irks me that I still, to this day, because of that instance, that one instance, I cannot purchase a firearm. I cannot legally own a firearm. I can't even carry one. Because somebody threatened my dad, and, you know, what the fuck are you gonna do when somebody threatens your parents right in front of you? What are you gonna do? You're just gonna stand there and go, oh, well, not my problem. I'm not my father's keeper. I'm not my mother's protector. Well, then you're a douchebag. Because you don't have any sense of family. Of course, I'm the evil one because I care so deeply about my family that I was willing to give my life. And yet that's wrong. This is my point. For those people who have been held down by people like that, by people who know the system and are willing to destroy others' lives, because of that, I now have to find a way to do this. I have to. And which is why I can verify with those felons and those, legally insane but not necessarily crazy people. This is why I can identify with them. Because I know what it feels like. I know how it feels to be held the fuck down at every turn, even though you make an absolute effort to do things the right way. To be morally appropriate. To be morally correct. Don't give a fuck about politics or any of that other crap correctness. Moral correctness. That's the important part that I stood on. And that people can't stand that I stood on. And that is why I'm making this. That is why I'm doing this. For myself. And then, by extension, for you. Because it wasn't long after, I had that first instance where somebody tried to kill me. Out and out tried to kill me. Came to my brother's house, where I was staying for a couple of nights, before going to the United States Army. This guy marched straight in through a fucking locked door, like it was paper, and proceeded to beat the shit out of me, and then take whatever was around and try and kill me with it. And when I say whatever was around, it just so happens I had a knife, and I was trying to keep it from him, which is why somehow it ended up in his possession. Which is why I put a lot of emphasis on Navy SEAL rule number 27. Never carry a weapon that could be used against you. I don't carry those kind of weapons anymore. I carry a weapon to use it. Which is why a 17 caliber isn't enough. It's got to be something that can do, that can be. And so there's that importance. You need to have that kind of defense. You need to have lethal power. Because all men are capable of it. Most women are capable of it. In fact, I would say it this way. Most men and women are capable of physical mortality of another human being without the use of a firearm, or an air gun, or a bow, or a knife. By the simple use of their bare hands, they are capable. And to say that that's not the case is asinine. However, there are those of us who are not physically capable of stopping a threat without utilizing some form of scientific force, which is why a firearm exists in the first place. I don't have the same physical build I used to have. I used to be a pretty ripped dude, a tough son of a bitch. And now, well, let's just say that I can no longer lift up the back end of my Suburban. I say that jovially because at one point in time when I was a young man, I lifted up the back end of a Toyota pickup truck by bare strength alone. And that was when I was a young man, very young, about 18, 19 years old. It's pretty interesting. I didn't realize I could do it. And now I can't, and I know I can't. I was amped up on adrenaline, and so of course, I don't think I could ever duplicate that. But well, just suffice to say that it's not something I can do anymore. All right. But to say that I'm physically incapable of defending myself is a stretch, which is why I know the ATF will never sign off on me having a firearm, even though I've got these problems, these other two issues in my record. Why would you stay? This is what the 5250 quotation is on. Why would you stay in a situation where you know that you are at a direct threat? End quote. Because I did not have the ability to leave. I had the will, sure, but I'm not going to hop a fence in the middle of Watts, California to try and go out the back of a house as somebody else is driving in the front who just so happens to be related to the guy who lives there. No, because that makes you look guilty.